The message travels quietly at first, drifting through the dark like a lost whisper. A distress signal, encrypted in a format older than most modern navies, bouncing between derelict relay stations and abandoned listening posts. It crackles with panic, fragmented words, and a voice that trembles beneath the weight of a collapsing empire. Somewhere deep in that static is a truth the galaxy has long forgotten. A cry for help sent to an address no one in their right mind would contact, humanity, but the ones who sent it didn't know that. Their maps still showed Earth as a minor border species. Their archives still claimed humans were scattered, primitive, barely touching the edges of the star lanes. They believed the once quiet, once isolated people of Sol were incapable of anything beyond polite diplomacy or small skirmishes. They had no idea what humanity had become. The signal finally reaches a Terran deep-range listening station perched on the edge of a blue-white nebula. A lone operator reviews it, puzzled, then alarms begin to echo across systems. Command notices the origin. Then the content. Then the implication. And suddenly, the eyes of an entire fleet pivot toward one tiny star system on the far side of the galaxy, where an empire is burning alive under the claws of its enemies, not because humanity owes them anything, not because humanity is bound by treaties or alliances, but because the message was sent to humanity. And humans, despite the endless wars, despite their reputation, despite the fear their fleets now inspire, still refuse to ignore a plea for help. Across the void, a dying world trembles beneath the shadow of an invading armada. Plasma storms tear through cities. Towers fall like dying giants. The defenders are exhausted, outnumbered, and outgunned. Their leaders despair. Their people hide. Their skies burn orange with ships that do not speak, do not negotiate, do not show mercy, and on the horizon of their ruined world, they wait for allies that will never come. They stare into the fires swallowing their cities and whisper prayers to ancestors who abandoned them long ago. And then the sky flickers, a ripple tears across the upper atmosphere, bending clouds, bending light, bending reality itself. Birds fall silent. Fires pause mid-gust. Even the invaders glance upward in confusion as the world itself seems to hold its breath. A breach opens, not a wormhole. Not a standard jump signature, a rift, wide enough to swallow a continent, luminous enough to blind a god. Out of that roaring curtain of light emerges a silhouette of impossible size. A spearhead hull plated in obsidian alloys, glowing with thin rivers of molten blue. The mark of Sol gleams across its bow like a rising star. Behind it, more signatures pierce the veil, one after another. Until the entire sky shimmers with arriving warships, humanity didn't send a scout, they didn't send an ambassador, they sent a fleet, and the moment the first Terran engines ignite, the world below feels its gravity shift, not physically, but emotionally, as though hope, long buried beneath rubble and fear, has finally clawed its way back to the surface. For the defenders, it feels like dawn. For the invaders, it feels like judgment. The lead Terran vessel fires a single superheated, kinetic lance that slices through the void like a star's breath. It hits the largest enemy dreadnought, and for a fraction of a second, the universe glows with blinding white. When the light fades, the dreadnought has been carved in half, drifting silently as its molten edges cool into drifting shards of metal. The defenders stare in disbelief, the invaders scramble, the Terran fleet spreads across the sky like wings of fire, and above the collapsing world, humanity speaks not with words, but with action, an answer to the forgotten message sent by desperate hands, an answer that says, "We heard you, we're here. And we don't run from danger." The battlefield transforms into a cathedral of explosions and streaking light. Human ships dance through enemy formations with precision and fury. Energy shields flare like small suns. Missiles spiral in elegant arcs before detonating against enemy hulls. The invaders, once unstoppable, now look fragile against the cold efficiency of a species forged in centuries of war, but beneath the spectacle, beneath the thunder of cannons and the brilliance of plasma fire, something deeper stirs. Something older. Something human, a sense of duty, a sense of stubborn, irrational compassion, because humans have always answered calls for help. Even when it costs them. Even when the ones calling never meant to summon them. As the battle rages, the world below begins to understand. This wasn't a mistake, this was salvation, and humanity had arrived with fire. The smoke had not yet cleared from the skies when the defenders realized the human fleet was still expanding across orbit. More rifts opened like molten scars in the firmament, each birthing another colossal shape that eclipsed the dying sun. Hundreds of vessels emerged in silent formation, carriers bristling with fighter wings, gunships armed with city-killer cannons, escort frigates glowing with shield matrices that shimmered like liquid diamonds. To the terrified empire below, it looked as though the void itself had decided to descend upon them. To the invaders, it looked like their final mistake. The invader command ship scrambled to reorganize. Their engines flared in chaotic pulses as they attempted evasive maneuvers, barking encrypted orders across their networks. Swarms of their smaller fighters poured from their hangars like panicked insects. Their formations sloppy, their movements betraying fear, but fear meant nothing against the cold precision now moving in from above. Terran interceptors ignited from the carriers, sleek, arrow-shaped craft with wings lit in electric blue. They moved as if guided by a single mind, weaving between enemy squadrons with an almost predatory grace. When they opened fire, it wasn't a barrage. It was a symphony of coordinated strikes, every shot calculated, measured, and lethal. Explosions dotted the upper atmosphere like blooming crimson flowers. The defenders on the ground could only stare upward, frozen not by terror but awe. Their bunkers shook with every distant detonation. Vibrations rolled through the ruins like approaching thunder. Even the wounded lifted their heads from the dust to glimpse the impossible sight, human warships burning the heavens in their defense. Some whispered in disbelief, some cried, some simply watched as hope, long abandoned, returned in the form of streaking contrails and metallic giants. Then, through the chaos, the Terran flagship descended lower, its engines humming with an ancient, terrifying power. It positioned itself between the planet and the enemy's primary battle group, casting a shadow so vast it swallowed city blocks. Every invader ship calibrated weapons toward it, and still, the Terran vessel advanced. Its hull shimmered with heat. Blue fire rippled along its plating, illuminating etchings of old war honors, battles fought on worlds these defenders had never heard of, victories carved into metal like history refusing to be forgotten. A sound rolled through the sky. Not a weapon. Not a warning, a pulse, a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through atmospheres and marrow, felt more than heard. The invaders paused, confused. The defenders shivered. The entire battlefield seemed to fall silent for a breath, as if the universe itself leaned closer to listen. The Terran flagship's forward spines unfolded like the wings of a celestial beast awakening. The pulse came again, then the ship spoke in the only language every species understood, light. A beam of condensed stellar fire erupted from its core, sweeping across the void in a roaring arc. Enemy ships caught in its path didn't explode, they ceased. Metal, circuits, bodies, all dissolved in a clean, absolute flash. Where an armada had been moments earlier, nothing remained but drifting particles glowing like ash in the sun. The defenders collapsed to their knees, the truth sinking in all at once. Humanity had not sent a rescue mission, they had sent judgment. Darkness rippled through the upper atmosphere as the last fragments of the enemy fleet drifted like burning embers across the sky. But the Terran fleet did not depart. Instead, more ships descended, methodically. Deliberately, taking up positions around the planet as though forming a shield made of steel and fury. Their hulls glimmered with faint traces of starlight, silent guardians watching from above. On the planet's surface, entire battalions of defenders emerged from rubble and broken streets, staring upward in disbelief. No one spoke. No one dared to. The air was thick with the scent of scorched metal, plasma burn, and the uncanny presence of salvation wearing the shape of war. Suddenly, the ground trembled, a human drop pod tore through the clouds, trailing fire like a newborn comet. It crashed into the ruins with thunder that shattered already broken windows. Dust plumed outward in a wide halo. And for a moment, nothing moved. Then the pod unfolded, not like a hatch opening, but like a weapon unsheathing itself, hydraulics hissed. Armor plates slid apart. Blue light glowed from internal seams. When the figure stepped out, the defenders recoiled, not from fear, but from the overwhelming weight of the presence before them, a Terran supersoldier, 3 meters tall, encased in reinforced gravplate armor, visor glowing with pulsing amber readouts, each step sinking several centimeters into the cracked earth. A living monument to the dangerous world that birthed them, they surveyed the broken city with slow, calculated motion. Their voice emerged through the armor's modulator, distorted. Low, almost rumbling through the bones of those nearby, not a threat, not a command, but a simple acknowledgement of what they saw. Then more pods fell. Dozens. Hundreds. Streaks of fire descending like a meteor shower, each carrying another of these towering Deathworld titans. They formed silent ranks, their armor shimmering like molten iron cooling in the night. Above, the Terran fleet shifted again, human warships repositioned, linking into tri-layer formations that generated vast overlapping shield fields. Blue barriers expanded across the sky, creating a dome that wrapped the entire planet in shimmering protection. The defenders felt the temperature change in the air, the pressure altering as the atmospheric shield activated. For the first time in weeks, they could breathe without fear, but the invaders were not yet defeated. Far across the continent, their remaining ground legions regrouped. Giant war machines rose from trenches, 6-legged walkers with beam cannons mounted along their spines. Swarms of drones ignited, regrouping into tight spheres of defensive formations. The enemy commander broadcast a message across the battlefield, its harsh alien voice trembling with restrained panic yet desperate resolve. Drones moved. Walkers advanced. Backup forces emerged from hidden hangars once thought destroyed. The defenders braced, but the Terrans did not. They watched, they waited. The super soldier in front stepped forward and crossed their gauntlets. Energy flared around them, a gravitational ripple that distorted the air, warping dust and debris into spirals around their armored frame. The storm began to rise, gathering at the soldier's feet. Humanity had not just come to rescue, they had come to prove why the galaxy feared them. The alien forces surged forward, massive legs pounding the cracked earth, drones screaming across the sky in coordinated swarms. Their weapons discharged in volleys of violet and red plasma, scorching everything in their path. Buildings that had withstood bombardment for weeks crumbled under the concentrated fire. The ground shook with each impact, dust and debris rolling like storm clouds across the ruined cityscape. But the Terrans moved as one. The super soldiers spread out, their armor gleaming in the fiery glow of the battle. Each step was precise, measured, unstoppable. Energy shields shimmered around them, deflecting blasts that would have vaporized lesser warriors. They advanced through the inferno without hesitation, cutting through alien infantry with kinetic blades that sliced the air in arcs of molten light. Above, the human warships orchestrated devastation from orbit. Carrier decks launched endless waves of interceptors and gunships, their weapons creating ribbons of destruction that threaded through alien formations. Plasma and missile fire intersected midair, detonating in flares of gold and azure. Capital ships aligned into perfect formations, concentrating fire on the largest enemy walkers and dreadnoughts. Each strike ripped through hulls, turning colossal machines into drifting debris fields. The planet itself seemed to respond. The Terran's gravitational stabilizers rippled across the surface, subtly shifting terrain to create barriers and openings, turning ruined streets into advantageous battlegrounds. Enemy walkers stumbled over toppled buildings. Drone swarms collided in confusion as human fighters darted through the chaos. The battlefield became a living orchestration of destruction, every movement calculated yet fluid, terrifying yet awe-inspiring. In the center of the city, the lead super soldier confronted the alien commander, a monstrous war machine bristling with weaponry, its armored plates shimmering with corrosive energy. They paused, sizing each other. The ground quaked beneath the tension, dust rising in spiraling clouds. With a sudden surge, the human leapt, kinetic blade igniting, cutting through energy shields and slashing across the alien's armament. Sparks and plasma erupted as metal sheared, a blinding flash that illuminated the devastation around them. All around, humans pressed the advantage. They fought with relentless precision, creativity, and courage. Every maneuver displayed a combination of intelligence and instinct, exploiting the alien army's overconfidence. The defenders, emboldened, joined the fight. Civilians armed with improvised weapons struck at supply lines, sabotaged machines, and freed trapped comrades. Humanity's strength was not just in firepower, but in ingenuity, unity, and defiance against overwhelming odds. By the time the sun set behind the shattered skyline, the alien forces were fractured, retreating in disarray. Smoke and energy flares painted the horizon in colors no one could have imagined. Ships that had seemed indomitable now drifted, destroyed or fleeing. The city, though scarred, still stood. Humanity had turned near certain death into triumph, and from orbit, the Terran flagship shone like a beacon, declaring to all who watched, they had come to fight. And they had come to win. The alien remnants retreated toward the edges of the atmosphere, their formations broken, their engines sputtering under relentless fire. Yet the Terran fleet did not relent. Orbital cannons flared, lancing streaks of concentrated energy that sheared through the hulls of retreating dreadnoughts. Fighter wings pursued the fleeing crafts, weaving through plasma trails and explosions with effortless precision, leaving no vessel intact. On the ground, the supersoldiers pressed forward, moving through streets still smoking from the earlier bombardment. Each step was deliberate, each strike surgical. The kinetic blades in their hands sang through alien armor, slicing limbs and weapons as if the creatures were no more than paper. Yet their advance was careful. They sought to incapacitate, to disrupt, to demonstrate that humanity's strength lay not only in destruction but in disciplined, calculated dominance. The defenders began to emerge from hiding. Soldiers, engineers, and civilians, all who had been trapped or cowering, found themselves emboldened by the humans' presence. Improvised artillery joined the fight. Makeshift barricades funneled enemy drones into kill zones. Explosions rose from multiple directions, coordinated with invisible precision as if guided by an unseen hand. The battle became a symphony of movement, humans striking, alien forces retreating, the planet itself reacting to the flow of combat. Above, the Terran warships executed a final maneuver. Carriers aligned in formation, creating an immense gravitational field that destabilized the remaining enemy vessels. Plasma shields buckled. Walkers and gunships collided midair, spiraling into fireballs that cascaded down to the surface. The flagship extended its forward lance, igniting it in a searing ribbon of white-blue energy. A single arc swept through the central enemy dreadnought, splitting it cleanly from hull to bow. Fragments tumbled in orbit, scattering debris that glinted like stars against the void. The alien commander, the last remaining colossal walker, fell back to a ruined stronghold. Its tentacles lashed at the advancing humans, firing corrosive beams, but every movement was anticipated. Supersoldiers leapt, dodged, and countered. With synchronized precision, they surrounded the beast, striking at joint points, severing weapons, and finally collapsing the alien's core. It fell with a reverberating crash, metal grinding against metal, sparks and fire erupting skyward, a testament to humanity's relentless pursuit of victory. Silence followed the last echoes of energy discharges. The Terran fleet loomed over the planet, engines dimmed, weapons stilled. Fires still raged below, but they were no longer signals of despair. They were a celebration of survival, of defiance, of triumph against impossible odds. The defenders stepped out fully into the open, faces streaked with soot and sweat, hearts pounding with awe. They had witnessed the impossible, humanity answering a mistaken call for help with a force unmatched in precision, fury, and moral resolve. The sky, once torn by fire and plasma, now shimmered with a quiet blue glow from the human shields. The Terran supersoldiers stood among the ruins, silent, imposing, yet protective. Humanity had arrived. Humanity had acted. Humanity had won. The alien remnants fled into the void, their communications jammed, their fleets shattered. The survivors scattered across empty space, drifting like wounded predators. Knowing instinctively that the Terran fleet would not follow, at least not yet. Humanity did not chase out a vengeance. They pursued only to ensure the threat could never rise again. On the planet, the defenders looked upon the scale of devastation and the scale of salvation. Entire districts had been leveled, yet in the heart of the ruins, life persisted. Children huddled with parents, engineers and soldiers repaired what they could, and the people began to rebuild, not just walls and structures, but the belief that they could survive anything. The presence of humanity's warships above cast a protective aura, a reminder that they were no longer alone. The Supersoldiers gathered at the city's center. Their armor scorched, weapons spent, yet every movement radiating strength and discipline. They surveyed the battlefield with quiet authority, assessing threats, ensuring nothing remained to challenge the planet's new defenders. Around them, the surviving humans of the colony moved with newfound purpose, learning, adapting, inspired by the precision, courage, and restraint of those who had come to save them. In orbit, the Terran flagship pulsed softly, its hull reflecting the fires below, a beacon for any who might have thought humanity was weak, scattered, or unwilling to act. Smaller vessels began to withdraw methodically, retracting shields, folding wings, engines glowing a steady azure as they formed a protective corridor for any remaining civilian craft. Every movement demonstrated mastery over chaos, a reminder that humanity's reach extended beyond mere firepower. The alien survivors, drifting among the wreckage of their own making, could only communicate fragmented messages, warnings, pleas, incomprehension. They had underestimated humanity, misjudged the species' capacity for strategy, resilience, and moral clarity. Across the stars, whispers spread. The humans who arrived for a mistaken call for help had left a trail of fear and respect that would linger for generations. On the planet's surface, as night fell and the fires cooled to embers, the defenders gathered. They watched the stars, blinking and bright, knowing that the same humans who had arrived from the void could return if needed. And they would, not because they were bound by law, treaty, or debt, but because they were human, and humans answer calls for help with fire, with courage, with everything they have. Somewhere far in orbit, the last Terran ships folded their wings, engines humming with silent power. A fleet that had arrived unexpectedly, fought flawlessly, and ensured survival, began its methodical retreat back to the stars. Yet the mark of their presence lingered, in the ruins, in the survivors, in the invaders' terror. Humanity had acted once again as both savior and reckoning, and across the galaxy, a simple truth became undeniable: to call humanity for help is to summon the storm itself.